Hi, and welcome to SIOR Live. I'm John Celestri, and we're here on the floor of the convention at the SIOR Spring Conference in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm really happy to have Don Catalano of iOptimize as my guest. Don.
Nice to meet you, John.
Nice to meet you, too. Thank you. iOptimize and drones, how do they come together?
Well, iOptimize Realty is a tenant representation firm that represents corporate clients around the country. Typically the Fortune 500 set, but sometimes some very high-end private companies. We've always been kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to technology, be it software, computers, cameras, videography. And when drones started to just come out just a few years ago, we were early adopters of it. So we picked up a drone, we picked up some expertise in it, and we picked up a lot of knowledge about it. Mm-hmm. Subsequent to that, though, one of the things that intrigued me about drones is I'm a pilot too. I'm an instrument-rated pilot. And subsequent to this all happening and us starting to use drones, we saw that our friends at the FAA took a dim view of commercial use of drones. Uh-huh. They're absolutely fine.
You could see why.
Yes, as a pilot, to a certain extent, I absolutely applaud it. I do want reasonable regulations. There's a lot of misinformation about drones. I've seen things in the press, and I've seen senators even say misinformation that the drones are coming and bring your kids in the house, or they're going to spy on your neighbor's going to spy on you.
Right.
Well, this thing is buzzing around. If you don't get it that your neighbor's there, that's all misinformation, and that it's going to cause real damage. The fact is, most of these drones are fairly lightweight. I mean, some of them they're toys that you can buy at Brookstone. They're styrofoam. You can fly those in your house. Right. They're not in and of themselves harmful. Even the ones, there's a company called DJI is the prolific company right now. There's competitors coming online. Those drones are maybe 20 pounds and the blades are this big. Even if you got hit with the blades, nothing would probably happen. Right. The danger comes in is if you were to take that same drone and they have the capacity to fly up to, let's say, 1,000 feet, and along comes a plane, maybe coming in for a landing. And people probably don't realize, because you see a plane up in the sky and you're thinking it's moving kind of slow.
And you can't judge height.
And you can't judge speed. You ever see,
Sure.
a big Boeing, it kind of looks like it's drifting along. What you don't realize, that Boeing drifting along is slowing down to probably 200 knots. Right. About probably 230 miles an hour.
Right.
Now, I doubt a drone would take out a Boeing. I really doubt that. But, maybe a Beech King Air, or a decent-sized small plane or a small jet. He's coming in for a landing. He's doing 200 miles per hour. Drone comes up to 1,000 feet and would come through the windshield. Right. That's the only real danger, and I'll be talking about that to the group. So this rules.
Right. You have a presentation at SIOR about drones.
Right, and from a pilot perspective. So I'll be talking about the rules of the road. Now, you can fly them, John, you can fly them very safely. All you have to do is fly them low.
Right.
And then they're a tremendous tool for our industry, not just for our industry, but most certainly for our industry.
And that's what I want to talk to you about. When I think of drones, I think of, Amazon's announcement that's how they're going to be,
I think that's kind of hype.
Delivering probably one product at a time, really.
Yeah, right.
I've thought about that.
I think it's good PR for them,
But in certain applications and certain changes in the methodology, I could see it impacting distribution. I've received photos as an editor of apartment buildings taken from drones. And the only reason I knew that is said, by the way, this was taken with a drone.
Right.
Seriously. But beyond that, when we were talking before, you said outside of industrial, there are also applications in office.
Oh, sure.
Talk to me about some of the other applications within real estate.
Well, whether it's land, industrial, or office space, or frankly retail, any place where the human would like to see a better perspective of it, something that's not just from street level, that's from 100 feet or 200 feet, which is pretty much every time, by the way.
Right.
We do love those perspectives. It tells us a lot of information. I always say when I'm flying my plane, I can fly you over your house, and you will see things that you never knew existed, though you lived there for 30 years. You get a certain perspective. And I think the public has gotten a taste of that through Google Earth and things like that and Bing Maps.
Right.
But the drones let you take it down to, let's say, 100, 200 feet. It gives you that close-in resolution, very high res, and the technology there with the cameras, with the GoPro 4, or there's other 4K cameras. Now we're dealing with 4K video. You know, it's 4 times the resolution of HD video. You fly a drone around a building, and it doesn't matter if it's office or industrial or retail. You're going to get a beautiful presentation. You're going to get a lot of information. I can tell if a landlord has been maintaining their roof just by flying over it.
All right, I can see that. So you would put drones in the hands of developers, brokers,
Yes.
finance people, maybe.
Sure.
Right.
And you'll see people in the service industries. You'll see people roofers who want to offer a free roof inspection, maybe to solicit business.
Sure.
You'll see people from HVAC contracting companies. You'll see appraisers. You know, that's right. A tremendous tool for appraisers. Getting out of our business, and I know we'll come back into our business, it's a tremendous tool for farmers.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Oh,
sure.
Oh, yeah. So what's currently happening, and what I want to explain to our constituents is, we're approaching where the FAA will allow us to do it with certain limitations. And most pilots are in agreement that they want certain reasonable rules of the road, because we don't want that conflict with drones. But, you know, the FAA has been going, may I say, slow.
Right.
Congress mandated years ago that they come up with some reasonable rules.
What are the chances that a federal government agency would act slowly? Amazing.
Right. And actually, the irony here is one of the things that probably promulgated them to move a little bit faster was that guy that landed the drone on the White House lawn. And so finally, you have Congress asking years ago, finally, the president says, you know, can we get moving a little bit on this?
More things have landed on the White House lawn during this administration.
The guy with the gyrocopter.
Exactly.
All friendly, thankfully.
Thankfully. What about best practices then? Because that's what keeps coming to mind. I mean, you were talking about flying into 747s and the like. But,
yeah, and that's what I want to get into.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, best practices is you don't fly it high. It's not safe, and it doesn't give you a good shot anyhow.
All right, sure.
You're going to fly it when you're allowed to fly it. I have to put this in quotes for my FAA friends watching this. They have a process now. It's called a Section 333. If you're a pilot, you fill out all these forms. So far, they've approved 200 applications on the Section 333, where you're allowed, with certain restrictions, to commercially use a drone. Now, privately, John.
Is that nationally or is that in certain states?
It's just nationally, and you know, it's just kind of rolled out, and it's going to take a while. Now, also nationally, though, and of significance to the SIOR membership, is that they are going to, besides that 333, which you have to be a pilot for and somewhat restrictive, they're going to come along with a program for non-pilots. You're going to have to go through an education, just like pilots. You're going to have to get certified. You're going to have to take tests. You're going to have to pay a fee. And I think as a pilot, you know, we all endorse that, because you have to then learn about our airspace that we know, airspace corridors, and you know, that level of safety. Once you understand that, you can act safe. But there are some rules of the road. The FAA wants you to have line of sight. So,
okay.
Because the technology is there now, what they call FPV, first person view, that you can literally buy goggles. And just like you see the virtual reality goggles, well, you can buy these virtual reality goggles, and some of them, like I think Bosch and Lohm sells them, very high-end goggles, and you can fly the drone with that. The problem with that is you're seeing a very limited tunnel vision. You're seeing what's being shown through the drone camera. You don't see what's coming behind the drone. So the FAA, and I endorse this, has said, no, you can't do that. You must have someone that has line of sight, human eyes on the drone. And that's all for safety, so you don't have a collision with a plane. And the other thing that people have to be aware of, and I'm going to explain this, is where do planes really fly. And fixed wing is not allowed to be under 1,000 feet over populated areas. However, helicopters don't have that limitation. So you're thinking, well, I'm fat, dumb, and happy. I'm flying it safe here, and I'm at 300 feet. Well, you have to be cognizant. Is there a helicopter coming down the pike? Right. So you really want a few spotters, and you'll have to be cognizant of other things, battery life. The current technology is, approximately 20 minutes of flight time, but you don't want to be at the furthest point at the 18th minute.
Right.
So there's some good tips in trying these out. Now, here's a very interesting point, John. You can buy a drone now legally, and I'm going to explain that to the FAA, not the FAA, sorry.
The SIOR people.
SIOR people. The FAA knows this right already. But you can go buy one and have it in a matter of days, and you can legally fly it as a hobbyist, where the FAA has said there's a division, as if you could make money with it. And what they construe as making money, not necessarily even just receiving $1. That would be a very clear-cut thing. You could just say, well, I'm not receiving any compensation for it. They've taken a very broad view, actually much broader than what they do for regular pilots. They've said, if it has anything to do with business, basically, it's commercial. And if it's commercial, you got to go through all these. You have to be, right now, you have to be one of the chosen 200 that have gone through this very hard process of Section 333. Right. And later, when they come out with more non-pilot rules, but you'll have to go through some qualification and testing and what have you, you'll have to adhere to that if you're doing it for a business purpose. Business purpose could be taking a picture of an office building. Right, exactly. If you're a real estate broker. So the FAA came out and said they actually warned real estate, they actually, I think, oriented it towards residential people, because there's a lot more of them, frankly, than there are commercial brokers. And they sent out a warning, because the FAA actually lost in court. There's a court, the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board. If you get brought up on charges with the FAA, there was a photographer that did, and they fined him $10,000. He took it all the way to court. They lost. Well, the FAA turned right around and said, hold the phone. Realtors were warning you, like we're a terrorist group or something, but realtors were warning you, don't use these drones. We're appealing that decision. Right. So that, I want it. Though everybody loathes regulation and everything, it's very important for the SIOR membership to understand what the FAA mindset right now, that they are taking a dim view of commercial use. Right. It's changing. I've seen it, and if they adhere to this, it will be great. That by September of this year, 2015, they'll come out with an ability for non-pilots to get some certification and use it for commercially.
It'll also be interesting to see how this evolves over the next year or so as it becomes more commonplace, as more demand arises, and how the FAA starts to ease up a little bit.
Hopefully, yes.
In the meantime, it's been a fascinating conversation,
Thank
Don.
You. I probably talked too much, but that's okay.
You did absolutely fine. And I want to thank you for the time. And I want to thank you for joining us on Globe Street TV.